right, I am happy to be joined with the CEO of Mydecine Innovation Groups. The CEO, Josh Bartch, joins us. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you on. We've been following you closely. One of the true leaders within the space. First question I always love to ask people within this industry, especially a lot of the CEOs, how much excitement and growth have we seen in this industry, would you say, over the last 12 months?
I mean, the last 12 months have been monumental for the industry. You've seen the emergence of obviously Compass. You've seen a number of very exciting initiatives. You've started to see some very strong public adoption between mainstream media outlets, and it's ultimately been incredibly exciting for the industry.
Yeah, for sure. You've actually become one of, as I said, the emerging biotech and life sciences companies in the space. So for those that don't know you or have discovered you yet, how would you best describe your business model?
Sure. So Mydecine Innovations Group really now has become a global company with really three main focuses, and one is IP and R&D, and our drug development pipeline is in that branch. Two is our clinical trial development, and then three is going to be our technology platform, MindLeap.
Right. So in addition to like the three pillars, maybe talk a little bit more in depth as to what differentiates yourself versus, say, other companies within the space.
Sure. So something about Mydecine that's incredibly unique is that we're fully vertically integrated from soup to nuts. So
Okay.
as it pertains to psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, we really have an A to Z capability. So we have a drug development pipeline that's really the start, and all the way from the cultivation to the R&D to the isolation of compounds, through to actually producing drugs with IND numbers that can be used in our clinical trials. Then we have a full global clinical trial infrastructure with sites approved throughout Canada, Europe, and now we're adding several sites in the United States as well. And then we have a technology and telehealth platform, MindLeap, that allows us to administer the psychotherapy protocols remotely, which we think is a very strong aspect to the company.
Yeah. How much potential do you see it with the technology? Because let's face the last 12 months, we've seen such a huge increase in importance and growth for the need for telehealth systems and medicines. So, you have many patients trying to avoid hospital rooms right now. A growing number of people have turned to telehealth from the comfort of their home. So, how does the model work, and how do you see revenue being generated from that?
Sure. So I think something that's really important to remember is that this is psychedelic assisted psychotherapy.
Okay.
And that 7/10 or 8/10 of the equation are one-on-one psychotherapy meetings between psychotherapist or therapist and patient with no substances taken at all. So building rapport preemptively, talking about your goals, setting expectations, et cetera. And then several, post-therapy after your 1 to 3 macrodose sessions, depending on the substance and indication, and then several post-integration therapies, really kind of making sense of what happened during the experience and then turning that into lifelong successes. So when these actual treatments commercialize and they're rolled out, geographically speaking, there's going to be a limited number of locations throughout the globe that individuals can actually go and receive these treatments.
Okay.
Individuals are going to have to travel to some extent, large amounts of distance in order to receive treatment. So if we can aggregate, which we've been able to do at MindLeap, professionals that are trained in the psychotherapy protocols under one roof and give patients access to be able to take the 7 or 8/10 of the equation remotely, it obviously vastly increases the scalability of the treatment, but also saves money and ultimately makes it much more scalable on a commercial side of things. So, MindLeap obviously takes care of that aspect, but it's much more than that. So MindLeap also, and what we're doing in kind of the 2.0, which we recently announced that we're going to debut in the spring, aggregates mental health tools. So things like breath work, meditation, cooking classes, ancillary things that ultimately improve your mental health state under one roof for a monthly subscription rate. So instead of having to download a yoga app, a meditation app, and has 7 different apps, having access to world-class mental health tools under one roof for one singleized monthly subscription, we think is incredibly beneficial in the long run.
Is it a way for people to meet other people that are maybe going through the same thing, to build some sort of a support group? Because let's face it, when you're going through things like this, the idea of not feeling like you're the only one going through this stuff, you start to build a support group. So is that a possibility? And is this like an emerging trend within the actual technology that you see continue to grow as we move forward?
So the answer to your question in short is yes. There's going to be second iteration, just like any technology company. You add, second generation, third generation, multiple iterations of the platform. So we absolutely are community based. We think that is so important. And that's as an industry as a whole. Collaboration, community is really important in this industry for it to be successful. We have a lot of hurdles that we need to overcome. You saw that kind of pitfall and those mistakes made in cannabis, and we don't want to, make those same mistakes in the psychedelic industry or psychedelic medicine industry. So, not on this specific version, but there will be later versions that allows that community aspect to be incorporated.
Yeah, that's great. Well, any team, obviously, that's a leader in this space, they have to form a great team. Doctors, researchers, certain clinical trials, and then the relationships that they have, let's say, with the FDA and Health Canada, which you've obviously done. Walk me through some of the relationships you currently have with Health Canada and the work that you're doing in Alberta, and as well your research team that was able to put a lot of that stuff in play.
Yeah, sure. So our chief medical officer, Dr. Rakesh Gently, just retired just about 3 weeks ago after 31 years in the Canadian Armed Forces.
Yeah.
Upon retirement, he was a senior psychiatrist with the Canadian Armed Forces, has chaired a number of NATO boards throughout the years, and obviously, his connections and his kind of fellow colleagues that he's worked with over the years treating patients and military, active duty, and veterans really are the best in class and kind of the who's who in the treatment of PTSD, et cetera. Through that, over the years, he's worked extensively with Health Canada. He's worked extensively and conducted, hundreds of clinical trials, et cetera. So he was able to kind of connect us with best in class individuals, and specifically Ethica CRO. So Ethica CRO is our chosen CRO.
Yeah.
They've had years and years and years of experience working with Health Canada on clinical trials, both in the United States as well as in Canada. So, we engage them, and obviously that's been incredibly beneficial. Additionally, API, Applied Pharmacological Innovation, which is a nonprofit organization that acts as essentially a conduit between university partnerships and individual private sector companies like Mydecine, to allow the private sector company to retain 100% of the IP that's developed in the partnership. They've also had years and years and years of experience and direct dealing with Health Canada. So between those two groups, it's been incredibly advantageous. And then to even compound that further, we also engage Pro Pharma Group. So Pro Pharma Group is an FDA and Health Canada consultancy that does drug development. They're one of the top in the world. They just recently acquired Weinberg Group. With those two combined, are one of the largest in the world as well. So, we have really a well-rounded team from multiple different backgrounds, multiple different angles that really allows us to tackle our goals.
Yeah, diversification obviously is a big thing when you're developing trials. You made that announcement, as you just said this morning, the partnership with Applied Pharmacological Innovations. You talk about creating your own intellectual properties. And from what I'm learning a lot, these are important questions to obviously ask if you're an investor. What would you say are some important questions if you're getting into the space, you're looking at specific companies, and some of the things that you should look for?
Sure. So there's a lot of companies that are emerging. We coined the phrase PowerPoint companies, where they put together a beautiful PowerPoint. When you peel back the curtain, there's not a lot of substance there.
Yeah.
And it's laughable, but you see that a lot with any emerging sector, right? So things that you really need to look at is if they say they're going to do something, what is their infrastructure that allows them to accomplish that goal? Whether that's drug development, whether that's conducting clinical trials, or even some of the companies that are doing clinics. There's a lot of different verticals that companies can operate in, but very few companies that actually have substance or the capabilities to accomplish that. So something that we've really been proud of at Mydecine is our infrastructure and our capabilities. And we literally have every capability under the sun from A to Z. And something that also is really significant that you want to look at is what is the kind of research infrastructure or production infrastructure. You're starting to see these companies that are applying for Health Canada dealers licenses, or really the global equivalent of that type of drug development license, or a Section 56, whatever they might be going for. But look at the facility that it's attached to and the capabilities of that facility. So for instance, Mydecine's license that we operate under operates out of the University of Alberta. So University of Alberta has a multi-$100 million lab. They're ranked top 15 in the world for pharmaceutical drug discovery, top 3 in the world for artificial intelligence, which obviously, plays a large role in new drug discovery. But also in the same facility, we have a full CGMP pharmaceutical manufacturing facility. So we can actually go from cultivation through isolation of compounds, through the full preclinical, clinical animal models in vivo and vitro, all the way through to actual CGMP pharmaceutical manufacturing with an IND that can then be exported globally to whether it's our clinical trials or we're supporting other clinical trials. So, very few companies actually have that capabilities. Really,
right.
There's very few. So again, you want to look at capabilities. You want to look at their ability to capitalize and actually, finish what they actually say they're going to be able to.
That's a great explanation and well thought out. I still look at your company right now, and it's, to me, one of the, I think, best buys within the actual psychedelic space right now, because, you filed your listing application last month to list hopefully next or later this year on the NASDAQ. Your fully diluted market cap of around $100 million, which is less versus other companies in the space that are conducting a phase 2 study. So there's tremendous growth, but I have to ask, why do you think that is? Considering you're just as far as along when it comes to a lot of these trials and studies that are taking place.
We like to say that we're the greatest untold story, and we're starting to tell that story more publicly, through platforms like yourself. A lot of companies right now in the space have spent a lot of money on marketing, and we haven't. We spent a lot of money on infrastructure and building out our company. So, over the next, call it 60 to 90 days, you're going to see some announcements that we think that are incredibly significant in conjunction with our NEO uplisting. That's happening in the next couple of weeks. We'll actually be fully migrated over to the NEO. The LSE listing, a lot of people have saw the original announcement and thought that kind of went by the wayside. Absolutely not true. We just received kind of a pre-approval letter from the FCA. There's a lot of nuances on these senior exchanges, especially the LSE when you're a psychedelic company, because we're going to be the first company listed on the LSE that engages in our business. So it's a learning curve, it's a process, and it takes longer than traditional listings would. Our preliminary prospectus on the LSE, we think, is going to be filed in the next 30 days or less.
Yep.
And that will really catapult that process. So the NASDAQ is there's a number of different requirements that we're working on meeting.
Yeah.
That over the next, call it 6 months, we think that we'll absolutely be able to meet those. There's a number of material events that we are incredibly excited to talk about publicly that we think that the marketplace is gonna appreciate.
Well, I think the most important thing too is, versus cannabis, the research that's being involved and the feedback that I'm receiving is that there's some tremendous results that are being created. And I think we'll see a lot of that come to fruition for the back end of the year. So I do think there's tremendous growth here in 2021. And obviously, we appreciate you stepping in and taking some time to sit down with us and talk to a little bit about your story. So again, appreciate your time, keep in touch, and keep things going forward, moving forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you in the near term.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate your time.